We've actually just got one, but double. So Kat, if you can give us a wave.
This is the one I'm on.
Yeah. So we've been lucky to work with Kat for many years now as one of our coaching partners. So she comes very, very highly recommended. We've got some E2W members that are working currently with Kat and have worked with her previously. So we feel very lucky to kind of, bring her into the community and have her support you. So we wanted to bring Kat on today, kind of end of year. I think we all need a bit of a G up, make sure that we're all kind of focused going into the new year. So I will leave it to Kat, but any questions in the chat, raise your hand. I'll try and monitor those. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Katie. Hello, everyone. Great to meet you. See some familiar faces, but always good to meet new members as well. So thank you for joining us today. I can't believe it's almost... I was talking to someone about it being 6 weeks till Christmas, and it's not, is it? It's really only 4. So investing some time in yourself and your leadership at this point in the year is great. It helps you springboard into January over that sort of big Christmas period in the middle. So who am I? I am Kat. I am an executive coach. I do 2 different things. So I work with leaders in context in their roles. Usually a high stakes moment for that individual, so they're new to that role, or there's something high stakes happening at the firm, so a big transformation program, a big change agenda, and that leader has significant responsibility for that, usually working at C-suite level and their direct reports, so with senior experienced leaders at those critical moments. I also work on the career change side, so where people have sort of moved through different leadership ranks perhaps in their firm and then have that moment of, I thought this was it, I don't think this is it anymore, and they're just having that wobble or a niggle moment to go, hang on a second, I think there's something different for me, something new I want to explore, I've outgrown this, what's next? I work with the same group of people, so leaders at that transition moment as well, so when they're looking personally at what's the next career move for them. Both of those I do via E2W, so like Katie says, know you well. My background is in financial services. I'm a corporate banker by trade. I spent 12 years working in banking, mainly frontline roles in corporate banking, and then through some middle office leadership roles, so customer experience, design, conduct risk, onboarding, sort of a few different lenses, and then latterly I led a team of coaches for a bank. So I've worn the coaching hat internally within a large firm, and then externally now in my own private practice. So I come at it from a few different perspectives. So I've seen a lot about leadership, seen some things work really well, seen some things prove more challenging. But by working across financial services and law and media, those are my main sectors. I'm getting a good glimpse of sort of tools, tactics, techniques and approaches that work well for leaders in this context. So today we're focusing on one particular tool that will help you to look at yourself, whether you're in a leadership position or not. It will help you to look at your own behaviour and shifting the outcomes that you want to create. But if you are in a leadership role, it's also going to help you to coach your team. So it's a great tool to use with people when you're moving them through a transition and something's changing at the firm, or you're having a one-to-one with them. Good at this time of year to start thinking about their career development and what next for them. So it's a good model for that as well. So I'll share some slides with you. Like Katie said, the first part of today will feel like a bit like teaching. So I'll share the tool and give you a couple of examples of how I see it working. But then what I'd love is for us to sort of hit pause on the recording and hear some live examples from you, because by bringing in some live opportunities and challenges will really bring the model to life. Here's some context to start us off. If I can go to my next slide. She says, and then nothing happens. Here we go. So 2 contexts, and both relate to behaviour change. So if we look at your career first, if you want a different outcome, you're going to need to take a different approach. So say, for example, at the moment you're creating a certain reputation for yourself in a particular sector or field, and you want to shift and become known as an expert in something slightly different. You're going to need to shift your behaviour and convince people that you could be an expert in a different area. If, for example, even just taking it down into a BAU perspective, at the moment you're talking to your team in a certain way, or you're talking to your boss in a certain way, and it just isn't working. There's tension in the relationship. You're not getting the support that you want from them, or you're not getting the clarity or direction you're looking for. What can you shift in your own behaviour that's going to get you a different outcome? How could you hold that meeting differently? What could you do differently? There's a good saying, so what got us here won't get us there. If you're looking to go up, either literally up a career rung to the next level, or if you're looking to just upgrade your mindset or lose some of the imposter thoughts that you're having in your current role, like what got you to a certain level of success in your current role is going to be different to what you need to do to get to a different level of success. And we sometimes forget that. We get caught in our current habit loops, our current thinking, our current way of being, and we get our same results again and again and again. In order to get a different result, we need to shift something, do something different. Like another good example, sort of in this personal space, is weight loss. So I know logically all of the things that I could and should do in order to be healthier, lose weight, get fitter, but I still need to break my current habit loops, break the way I currently think, act and behave if I'm actually going to get a different result. At the moment, if I keep eating the chocolate, I'm going to stay the same or potentially deteriorate. So again, it's about what's the next evolution, right? So I'm setting the business case and personal case for, if we want something different, we have to shift behaviour. If you bring that into a kind of working context now, from a leadership perspective, the reason I think this is important is because your leadership is unique. And particularly when you hit more senior roles, so it becomes less about managing using a set series of processes like performance management and how to run a one-to-one and how to run a team meeting. At some point in your career, you start with those basic building blocks and you start your management career and you add to your experience. When you get into more senior roles, you can bring in even more and more and more of your personal flair, your personal leadership style. Like, how do you do it? And that's what I'm interested in. And that requires a degree of trust in yourself. It requires confidence. And it requires knowing that you're going to get a good outcome if you behave slightly differently, perhaps from the corporate norm. So I'm interested in eliciting your unique contribution to leadership, not just the kind of textbook flavour, the way everyone else, kind of does it. Leadership is about experimenting and learning, so we need to be willing and happy to try something and have it work, and equally try something didn't quite work out for us. What can we shift, edit, change and try again? That's critical to this particular tool I'm going to teach you today. I think there needs to be a level of iteration and development and sort of continuing to improve. And then this tool that I'm going to show you today in particular is great for coaching your team. The tool is called Triple Loop Learning. So I'll dive into it now and give you some examples as we go of how it works. So this is what we do a lot of the time. So we take an action and we get a specific result. If it doesn't work, we might try another action. Say, for example, you are, let's take a career example first. So you're having a career conversation with your boss and you say, I think I'm ready to be put forward for the promotion round this year, or I'd like a promotion and I want support applying for a different role. And the result is that nothing happens. You might go, okay, so having that conversation with my direct line manager didn't work. What else could I try? So you might try having a conversation with a different sponsor in the organisation. You might try directly applying on your internal career website. You might try hiring a coach and seeing whether there's some development that you need to do. You might try going on a leadership training program. Ultimately, you're in that learning loop, right? So you try something, does or doesn't work, and then you go back round and you're like, right, what else could I try? What else could I try? So that's a kind of classic learning loop, and you having the willingness to try different things and see what works. The next iteration of that is slightly more sophisticated. So that's saying, okay, so I'm already trying different actions, but I'm getting the same result. The blocker is still there. So let's try thinking differently instead. Actually, my approach at the moment is, I think I'm ready for a promotion. What steps do I need to get it? What other ways could I be thinking that would shift the possible actions available to me? So, for example, I think that I could speak to a recruitment company like E2W and get some perspectives on what's going on in other workplaces and what kind of roles could be available at my level. Because maybe I'm going for the wrong thing. Maybe I'm thinking in a linear way, and there are multiple other career opportunities available to me that I could progress better or faster. Sorry, I've got a tickle in my throat. That would be a way of thinking differently, right? You're like, oh, maybe it's a different role I go for. Maybe you've been fixated on this promotion point, and actually what you want or need is greater career breadth. So how about thinking about a role that's at the same level, but in a completely different department? So for example, I moved sideways between customer experience leadership and conduct risk. I was like, it would have been nice to have a promotion, but actually what I needed was risk on my career CV. If I wanted to be a senior leader in financial services, I wanted customer facing, design and risk. So I was willing to take a sideways move to do it. But that required different thinking, because really it would have been nice to go for a promotion, right? So that's a way of thinking differently about it. Lots of different ways that you could think differently and then surface different ideas for different actions that are going to get you the result that you want. And then the third iteration of this, in its sort of most sort of full and sort of complex state, is even thinking differently getting you enough? Because ultimately, if the promotion is what you want, you need to be different. Like how you're showing up is going to be influencing and impacting the result that you get. So for example, in that promotion scenario, if all of your work delivery is consistent with your current role and your current level, and the way that you're speaking and articulating yourself at leadership committees or at board remains the same, people are thinking of you in that context and in that role. How would you show up if you'd already given yourself that promotion? So for example, if you were in that elevated position and you were going into board, how does that person be, right? So how much, and this is a kind of ethereal thing, right? And I'm trying to give it language, but like, would your shoulders be further back? Would you be standing up straighter? Would you be holding yourself differently? Would you be wearing something different? Would you have prepared differently for that interaction, knowing how critical your delivery is? Would you have engaged with people on the board in advance so that you had buy-in already to the points you were going to deliver? Would you have done a practice rehearsal session of this pitch with someone else first because you want to show up and be ready at a different level? All of that contributes to the impact that you create in that meeting and ultimately the result that you get. Another good way to think about being is to be the host, right? So if you were hosting a party and people were coming to your house or coming to a venue that you've arranged, like one way to behave at that event would be, well, all these people know me. They're all coming to see me and our family, and so everyone will mingle with each other and everything, and they'll have a good day, right? So that's kind of a way of thinking and acting around an event. A different way, being the host, actually really stepping into kind of leadership and leading by example, would be like, how do you greet people when they arrive? How do you make introductions so that other people within the group have others that they can talk to? What talking points can you give them? What points in common do some of your guests have? Like, when the food's out, where are people with different dietary requirements? Where's their food, and how are you going to articulate that to them? What's the kind of ambience that you want at your event? Like, being the host is a completely different kind of behavioural attitude and style to just kind of rocking up at an event, or running your own event. And the important bit is that you don't need to be hosting the party to act like a host, right? So you could go to a networking event, you could go to the E2W Christmas drinks in a couple of weeks' time, and how would it be to show up as if you were a host? So you show up ready to support other people to meet each other, to help them, like, point out, oh, you know, here's where you grab a drink, and then come back and join us because we'd love to hear more about you. How do you ask them questions about themselves? Like, how do you create a point of like interest or difference within the conversation? Like, coming into that kind of environment and choosing to act as a host is very different to turning up and expecting to be in a passive situation where you're kind of rocking up as a member to attend and to be hosted by others, right? So I give you those contexts in examples in a career context and the kind of hosting a party context, because I think they're easy to tap into, and you can see how you're being, how you're thinking, and what you're doing. All three of those layers are influencing your results, and it might not be the most obvious, your action, that's the challenge. There might be some work to do on other pieces. Let me give you a leadership example to bring it to life so you can kind of see this in an organizational context. Say, for example, you're changing one of your IT platforms, and you know, everyone can inwardly groan at this moment because we know how it rocks a business when you change your email platform, or you change the CRM system, or you implement a new piece of sales kit in the background like Salesforce, or you implement Slack, or you switch from Zoom to Teams. Like, you know, all of us have experienced these moments, right, where you know there's going to be points of frustration on the journey, but a corporate decision's been made and you need to implement it as best as you can. If we look at the doing loop for implementing that piece of tech, you might think, well, what actions do we need to take in order to implement it well? Okay, so you might think, right, we need a pre-briefing for the team to tell them what's going to happen. We need training on the new technology. We need clarity on all the dates of what's happening and when, and if we need to communicate anything to clients, right? So you'd have your tick list of things to do that are critical to this implementation of that, like, technology change going well for you and your team. All of that's important and needs to happen, and you might iterate and learn as you go and add more actions into that list. But what's also critically important is how you're thinking about that change, because it's going to leak into your behaviour. So how much thought are you giving to articulating why the technology change was important? Anticipating what other people might be thinking, like, this is a bad time of year to do this, we're really busy at the moment, this is frustrating, this will impact customers. Like, anticipating the thoughts that are going to run through your team's head gives you an opportunity as the leader to front message it. So you can capture that in advance, say, I know XYZ, and I'm feeling some of that too. Here's how I think we can make this work best for us and our team, taking into account some of these things that are going to be running through all of our minds. And you catch the attitude early on, right? And it helps you when you're leading any kind of change into your team to sort of get yourself in their heads, like, what are they thinking, so that you can address it. We also want to catch your own thinking, because your thinking influences your behaviour. So if you're thinking this is going to be a disastrous meeting with the team, they're going to hate this change, you know, our will becomes reality. So you'll probably have a harder time in that meeting because you've set yourself up going in with that kind of thought process. If you can instead go in thinking, I'm going to have I need to deliver this message to the team and I want it to be positive. So I'm going to think about all the ways in which this platform is going to make our team and my life better and more successful before I go in, so that when I'm going in with that energy. I'm going in with a growth mindset. How can we make this work for us? Rather than, why are corporate doing this to us again? Yeah, that kind of thinking hugely influences how you show up in the meeting, the actions you agree with the team, and ultimately how it gets implemented. And to take us into the triple loop, so the B loop, how you show up is going to absolutely influence the energy in the room as well. So it builds on our previous point, right? So how you're thinking impacts how you deliver, how you show up physically. So you know, can they read it on your face? Oh, she's got bad news for us. What's going on now? Or what next? Like, how are you going to be in that moment? Are you going to step up and into leadership mode? And I don't mean corporate robot leadership mode, like here's the message, this is what we're going to do. I mean authentic leadership mode. So for you, tailoring that messaging so that it fits you and your style, but also it is the message. So you buy into it and you find a way to buy into it and you put that in your own frame of reference and your own words. You're like, right, who do I need to be in order to deliver this message well? And that version of yourself, still authentic, but that version of yourself shows up and steps up so the team can see, right, okay, I can see that the buy-in's there. I can see they care deeply about how this change is going to impact us. I see that we're being invited to share our thoughts about what could go well, what could go wrong. And I can see the action and follow up and how we're going to embed this as a team. So your attitude and how you show up is a direct sort of correlation and influence on ultimately how that tech change happens and how it gets embedded. You can also invite the team, and you know, again, some people get this concept really quickly, some people don't, but you can invite them to think about how they're being. So are they literally sucking the life force and energy out of everyone in the room by deeply criticizing every part of this change that we all know is going to happen? Is that helpful? Like, who they're being is influencing how the team perceive them. Like, are they a blocker on other things? Are they somebody who's negative in other ways? Are they absorbing team energy in other ways? All of that gives an impression of that person because that's how they're choosing to show up, how they're choosing to be. Other people in your team might show up and say, right, this is going to be difficult. I'm not pleased about it, but here's how I think we can get behind it. And they're very quickly able to get into that growth mindset space. You'll know your team. So you can invite them to reflect on how they're being. How do they react to change news? How do they react to you? How do they react to each other? So you can see that this is an invitation. It's a way of thinking about change in advance of doing it so that you can cover off all these bases. But it's also a way of coaching individuals within your team because you're able to take them through each of these steps and get far greater clarity on what's going to best support them to do something differently. In corporate, we can be a bit guilty of just focusing on what needs to be different. So that doing piece, what are the actions from today? If you haven't invested enough time in understanding what they're thinking, like what's the script running through their head that means they're creating the results they're creating, and how are they sort of showing up energetically, you're missing a lot of potential upside in how you get them to change their behaviour and shift and do things differently. So I see it as an opportunity. I see it as an opportunity for us to reflect on ourselves, and I see it as an opportunity to reflect on our leadership and how we lead. That's the sort of formal teaching bit. What I'd love to spend the second half of our session doing is diving into some examples with you so we can hear from people in the room a live challenge or opportunity you've got, and just let us mess with your thinking, let us mess with your actions, let us mess with how you're being. And by doing that, you'll see some examples, some of the questions that I asked that person. You'll see how you might start to move people as well.